Hey, you're listening to Stop the Scroll, a social media marketing podcast, and I'm your host, Heidi Schmidt. I'm a social media strategist and agency owner with over 15 years of marketing experiences helping businesses grow online. We'll be diving into what you need to know so that you can show up confidently online without the overwhelm. Get your notebook ready to jot down some amazing marketing gems, and let's dive into it. Welcome back to another episode of Stop the Scroll. I'm your host, Heidi Schmidt, and today I am going to answer some questions from some listeners / frequently asked questions from my clients. And I wanted to keep it light and conversational. I don't know. It's been a week for me. It's the week that I'm recording this. My husband and my son are away at scout camp. I'm recording this again during another thunderstorm. And my two cats, so literally, if I wasn't married, I would be one of those, childless cat ladies. But I am married and I do have a child, but I'm still a cat lady. So my cats are about 7.5 months old. So I'm going to start with this total sidebar because I know my editor, my podcast manager here, Liz, loves my sidebars, but this is my week. And by the time it came to me, figuring out what I wanted to talk about on this podcast, because I kind of have them planned out, but to be honest, I don't really always follow my plan. So I was like, maybe I'll do a Q&A episode, because the cats, literally on Sunday, I started to notice the cats kind of getting it on. So I suspected that my one female kitten, because even though we thought that we got 2 males from our friend back in February, turns out it was a male and a female. That's fun, right? So we had planned to kind of get them fixed in June. The challenge was in May when my husband took them into the vet. He did not schedule it. And the vet wasn't like, oh, hey, your cats are due to be fixed. Let's get them scheduled, when he took them in for their booster vaccinations. So needless to say, when I called in early June, they could not fit us in until late-ish July. Mainly the day before I'm supposed to travel up to Connecticut, when my husband and my son will already be in Connecticut. So I was like, nope, that's not going to work for us. So it was literally scheduled for the last week of July, when we got back from that trip. But this week, my one cat kind of decided to hoe herself out to her brother, because cats don't care. So while my family was overheating at scout camp in the middle of the Pennsylvania woods, I was trying to, keep my cat's legs closed. So needless to say, it has been a week for me. I'm exhausted. And so I was just I don't really know what I want to talk about this week. I haven't done any research. So we're just going to do a little Q&A episode. So I pulled together, these are real questions that I've gotten from clients, some listeners, DMs, all that kind of fun stuff. And, as always, if you have questions or if there's something that you want me to cover, do not hesitate to send me a DM. I would love that. Yeah. So first question, what's the best scheduler to use? And I literally just got asked this question. So one of my consulting clients has some interns that I'm working with and kind of coaching them, guiding them, working with her and the interns to kind of guide her social media strategy and get it all set into place. So this morning, one of the interns asked me, she's like, hey, what's the best scheduler to use? If you ask any given social media manager, if you ask 5 different social media managers, chances are you're going to get 5 different answers. For me, I use Loomly. Loomly is my scheduler of choice. I like it for the agency model, that I can manage different accounts, that it has a great client approval process. There are certainly some things that I wish it did differently. Beggars can't be choosers. It's pretty reasonably priced for the number of accounts that I'm managing on there, so I really like Loomly. For a solopreneur who's probably managing their own, I would probably recommend something like a Later, which is very Instagram friendly, Planoly, which really helps you plan things out. It works pretty well. And Buffer. I started with Buffer when I started my agency. I've used Planoly. I've used Later. A lot of people like Metricool. Metricool gives you a lot of analytics, and they all have a wide range of budgets. I will say I do not love Meta Business Suite. I find it clunky. Many a social media manager have said that they've lost posts all that kind of thing. Like, I just don't love the in-house Meta Business Manager scheduler. It's not my favorite. LinkedIn plays okay with some schedulers. Sometimes it's better for native posting. And you can schedule directly on LinkedIn, which is kind of a nice feature. I will say I was very excited this week when I started to see that Buffer and Metricool and all these other platforms are getting individual account analytics, which is kind of amazing. I'm waiting for them to come to Loomly. It'll probably be another 6 months because Loomly is sometimes a little late on these things. So those are probably my recommendations for schedulers. If you have another one that I missed, I know I've heard of Hey Orca. I have never used it. I know people that use Zoho. Again, I've never used it. There's tons out there. I recommend trying free trials and seeing what works best for your workflow and also your budget, because they're all a wide range of budgets. This was literally a question that came about from a conversation with friends. So for those of you who don't know, it's kind of out there right now that I'm running for public office here, but I sit on the County Democratic Central Committee here in Maryland. And we were recently chatting about social media because we're all volunteers and, we all kind of dabble in it and it's not really well thought out sometimes. This is why I don't personally like to volunteer my skills that are in my business. There are other things that I would rather do. And I also sit on the events and fundraising committee, and I really enjoyed that work, helping to plan events, helping to choose where we should be in the community, all that kind of fun stuff. That's fun for me. Anyhow, how do I know if I should be on TikTok or Instagram or both? TikTok and or Instagram or both. To that, I say, if you're questioning whether or not you should be on TikTok or not, what's your audience? And this is true of any social media platform. What is your audience? You want to go where your ideal client is the most active. If they're 30 to 50 and you're a service-based business, Instagram and LinkedIn are probably going to win out for you. TikTok's audience skews younger. However, it's growing in every age bracket. And also there's the question of how long is TikTok going to be around? None of my clients are on TikTok. Here's the thing. Also, the amount of energy that it takes to grow a TikTok following, it's pretty a hefty amount of content that you've got to be throwing out there to really get some traction. There is a woman that I know who is building her personal TikTok, and a couple months ago, I saw her. She was just getting started, or she had 2,000 followers, and she's doubled it. But she is literally posting, I see her videos 3, 4, 5 times a day. And they can be short. They don't all have to be super polished, super snappy, whatever, but it can be a lot. Personally, I like TikTok just to have fun on. I post a lot of cat videos over there. This weekend I had a lot of fun talking about my, cat conundrum, if you will. Don't think my account is locked yet. However, I will probably be locking down some of my more personal accounts as the campaign gets underway, because I don't need people screenshotting things. Not that, funny thing, and this is a little bit of a sidebar. So when I think about, and this will kind of bring me into the next question that was asked about personal versus branded content, what's the line? But, is it okay to post personal updates on your business account? We'll get into that. So funny thing about my social media presence. And, way back in the day, I used to be an oversharer to the extreme. I, at one point, had a live journal and, I would keep things locked down. And there were some things that I just never, ever talked about. I don't really try to talk, back when I was one of those kind of blogger content creators back in the early aughts, I would not talk about my family because I don't want to throw my family under the bus. I very rarely talked about relationship issues, although sometimes I'd lock them down and talk to them among my live journal friends. And I wouldn't ever talk about my I wasn't going to talk a lot about my sex life. That was always those were always or work. I never really talked about work. Those were kind of my 3, 4 hard lines on what I would share with the internet. And sometimes it feels even as I try to build my personal brand and kind of share a little bit about my life, a little bit about me, all that kind of stuff, I've kind of tried dipping my toe back into that content creator world over the past 5 years. And I just can't get past that. Like maybe I'm like insecure and feel like I'm not witty enough to be one of those content creators. Like I always see content creators who are like asking these really interesting questions and I'm like triggering all of my imposter syndrome, my friends. But at the same time, like I am my brand and everything that I put out there online comes back to me. It's a reflection of me. It's a reflection of my values. So I've always kind of, there are people on TikTok that just overshare. I'm sure we've all seen them before. So you have to figure out your boundaries for that, what you want to share. But, do you post personal updates on your business account? One, it depends on your business. Two, what's the purpose? And I say that because, we want content to have a purpose. What is it doing? Is it building that connection? Is it building an emotional connection with your audience? Then absolutely share some of those personal updates. You want to be personal with a purpose. You don't want to overshare. I think sharing behind the scenes. A client of mine recently did like a 30 days of gratitude, which was amazing. It was the perfect balance of like tying things back to business and sharing her personal life. And she was posting a reel a day, so her results were pretty incredible, but that's how you do it. And, when you think about personal updates, like, hey, is it behind the scenes? Is it a challenge that you're overcoming? Like me sharing about how I've spent the past 3 days, keeping my cats separated like horny teenagers. Are you sharing client moments, client wins, lessons learned? What's the lesson of, I've shared many a lesson of me really learning how to manage a team and manage my time and the challenges and the best practices that I shoot for my clients, for myself, and all these things. And there are challenges, man. So don't hesitate to share those personal updates. I think there's a time and a place for everything. Some of my top performing posts, I try to relate to my clients back to the whole overwhelmed, not knowing where to start, because it's something that I struggle with too. Like, I do social media for a living, but like sometimes with my own social media, it just falls to the wayside. My creative process is very much like I have to be inspired to show up, which is terrible. The weeks that I batch my content, I always feel better, but I don't always have the time to do that. So it's a challenge. But find your boundaries, determine what you're willing to share, connect it back with those problems that you're trying to solve with your audience, and think about, again, personal with a purpose. Let's see. What's the next question? How much time should I be spending on social media each week? So I typically say, if you're planning a month, like if you're planning your content a month out, which I often try to do, I haven't been doing as much lately. I will spend like an hour once a month just kind of planning. Creating takes me an hour to 2 hours each week, like creating for myself, between the designs, any reels, all that kind of fun stuff. Like I'm going to say 1 to 3 hours because, yeah. And when I create, I am also scheduling. So some people create and then schedule. It depends on, again, what tool you're using. And then I spend anywhere from like 15 minutes to, I'd probably say upwards of an hour each day, kind of just like scrolling, engaging, and not an hour all at once. But, over the course of the day, like 15 minutes in the morning when I first sit down, 15 minutes at lunch, 15 minutes before the end of the day, and sometimes in the evening. Like if I'm just hanging out, like I'll probably go on for another 15, 20, 30 minutes. So I spend anywhere from an hour or two to engaging, responding, researching, all that kind of fun stuff. So aim for like 3 to 5 hours per week, max. Like, listen, you're a business owner, right? If it's taking you more than that weekly, then it's probably time to, one, simplify your strategy or get some support because you have better things to do than spend, 5, 10 hours a week managing your social media. That's time that you could be working with clients, right? That's kind of what I would typically recommend. If you're overthinking it, like, just stop. Overthinking is what becomes the time suck. And I say this from experience. When I overthink my content, it takes me a million times longer. The best posts are the ones that I'm just kind of like, oh, I have a bit of inspiration. Like, let me throw this up. So if you're spending any more than like an hour a day or so just posting, then we should talk. Is it possible to post too much? and this is a question that I recently got on a strategy call. Yes and no. I always say focus on quality over quantity. If you're posting 3 or 4 times a day on Instagram, like, are you posting those as feed posts and reels? Why aren't you using them with stories? So Instagram, Adam Mosseri has come out and said that 3 to 4 times a week is typically plenty, especially when it's paired with consistent engagement and stories. So again, if you are showing up 3 to 4 times a day, like, let's rethink your posting strategy here. More posts does not always equal more results. And especially in the business realm, I feel like there are kind of different strategies for, creators versus businesses. Businesses, like, we're not style creators. We're not creating lifestyle content, lifestyle content creators. I feel like they kind of have different rules to some extent. I could be wrong. Yeah. But more posts does not equal more results. So if you're posting any more than 2 times a day, we should probably look at your analytics and see if you're catapulting your own engagement. Because typically that's what happens. Like, when you have more than 2 posts a day, then you're just going to throttle your own engagement because people are going to see all these posts from you and none of them are going to get engagement and then none of them are going to get seen. So if I see a client who posts something in the morning, then I will typically wait or reschedule my post for them. And I say that in the realm of, for instance, last month when my client was doing this, her 30 days of gratitude, that was a reel each day. Sometimes she'd post it in the morning. Sometimes she'd post it in the evenings. I didn't overthink too much about that because it's a reel. So if we were posting a reel, I might, even if I got the notice to schedule it at 9 a.m., I might wait a little bit, especially if I noticed that it was getting good engagement. So I was trying to be mindful of that. I would never recommend posting back to back to back to back to back. So be mindful of that. Here's another good question. Kind of on that realm, what's more important, posting reels or engaging with other accounts? They work in tandem. Reels obviously expand your reach, but engagement builds that trust. There have been times, literally it was a month or 2 ago, I wasn't very good about posting on my own account, but I was engaging regularly and I still grew over the course of the month. So even if you're not posting, even if you're only posting 1 or 2 times a week, if you are engaging daily, engaging with your clients, engaging with your ideal audience, engaging with any business partners that you might have, your community, that's still going to build visibility. So even if you're scaling back on your posting because you're burnt out, whatever, don't underestimate the power of engagement. So it's not an either or, it's more like a both and kind of. So, if reels are overwhelming to you, then be active on your stories and engage with other accounts is what I would say until you kind of get out of that content creation rut that you might be in. Should you boost posts or run ads if you're not getting any traction? Boosting, as we know, and I'm going to link to a great episode with a Facebook ads expert who is a business buddy of mine, Carol Gabali. I think I said her last name right. She is brilliant at Facebook ads, and she will say boosting is not a real strategy. You're just paying for eyeballs. You're not paying for action. So ads work when you have that goal, not when you're trying to fix engagement. It's great for reach, brand awareness, but it's not a strategy. Having a strategy behind your ads matters way, 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 way more than boosting. So I do not recommend boosting posts. There's a time and a place for everything. I'm going to link to that episode with Carol in the show notes because there was a lot of good nuggets in that episode. There's a really good question. Do I need to email my list and post on social? And anyone that's asking that, can we talk? Yes, because we know that social media is rented space. You don't own your social media audience, but you do own your list. So we want to be always building our list. And we know that email converts about 4 times higher on average than social media. For every $1 you spend on email marketing, you will probably get back at least $40 ROI. So absolutely, I recommend email marketing for sure. It's there to support your social media strategy, but it's also there to because we know that our social media posts get garbage for reach. We know this. Like, reach is garbage. So we also know that a good open rate for email is probably like most of my clients see between like a 35 to 50% open rate. So you're getting in front of more people easier with email. The two really go hand in hand. I don't recommend only doing one. I say it's a both. You need both. Let's see. Last question. All right. So last question, it's how do you stay consistent with content when life gets busy? Oh man, this is not something that I'm great at. I'm not going to lie. My content is often the first to fall by the wayside because I care more about my clients and I don't always treat myself like a client, and I should. And that would be something that I'd recommend for any business owner out there. Treat yourself like a client. I really try to, when I have an idea about what I'm going to talk about or what I'm going to post about, it's easier for me to either try to batch. The biggest hang up for me, I will be completely honest, I can write captions for days. I honestly, like last week, leading up to the launch of my social media masterclass, which is still open, like you can still register for it. You'd miss like the opening week, but we can always schedule a 1-hour strategy session for that. If you're still interested, please don't hesitate to send me a message. I will drop the link in the show notes. If you're still wanting some support and some insight as to how to manage your own social media better and have a more coherent strategy. So for me, I really try to be consistent with creating captions. Captions are really easy for me, and I try to make them evergreen, things that I can move around when I need to. If I do not have my graphics or an idea for the reels that I need to create, that's what becomes my hang up. I will say having templates helps. I've really tried to simplify my own social media posting. I typically will do carousels and reels. I still do the occasional static post, but if I'm posting, say, a reel to Instagram, if I cannot cross-post it to Facebook, because some music you cannot cross-post to Facebook, it'll still get recommended over there, but it doesn't typically perform as well. I will try to use like maybe my cover photo for the reel to use as a static post on Facebook. So I try to have a plan for those times when like, hey, it's important for me to show up, but I'm not great with it. I have been trying to consistently send out one email a week. At the very least, my podcast email. Feel free to sign up for my email in the show notes. I am going to get back to my newsletter. I've just literally, I still have a draft of a newsletter from May, but I am such a perfectionist that I really, really have been letting perfect be the enemy of good here. So I need to get back to that, because also like I really had a plan to do the experiment with LinkedIn newsletters, and yeah, I've kind of fallen off that. So, but life's, like you got to take care of yourself. You have to take care of your own mental health. And for me, my own social media for business, like in the realm of, when you're managing your life, especially as a business owner, you have glass balls and you have plastic balls. And this is like a whole analogy. I forget where I heard it from. It's not my own original thought. I'm not taking credit. But I think about this often when I think about when things are busy, like there are glass balls, there are plastic balls. What is a plastic ball where my life will not shatter if I drop it? So, client work, those are sometimes glass balls. Sometimes they're plastic, but oftentimes they are glass. My own social media, my own email marketing, those are plastic balls. Like if I have to show up for my kiddo, if he's got stuff going on, like those are glass balls. I need to be there. Client work is always glass ball. My volunteer stuff, that is often plastic. The world will not end. My family, my husband, that's a glass ball. Sometimes it's plastic, and I can apologize for that and, whatever. But I try to prioritize that, and that tends to be a glass ball for me. So my content is one of those plastic balls. And that's really when life gets busy, and if it's my own sanity versus posting a reel, like it's going to be my own sanity. So remember, and we all want to be consistent on social media, but I'm going to say this, and this is going to be my final note because this episode's getting a little long for me. consistency is not a strategy. The message that you are putting out there is your strategy, not how frequently you are posting. So even when things are busy, like I'm still showing up on the platform, I'll still post to Instagram stories, I will still engage in Facebook groups, but maybe I just don't have the brain capacity to put my own stuff out there. Recovering perfectionist. Hi, it's me. I'm Heidi. I'm a recovering perfectionist. Yeah. And then I'll look ahead, in those times, like that's the time that I try to take okay, I know that I'm probably not going to put anything real or meaningful out this week. I'm going to show up on stories, but I want to have a plan for getting back to it. It's not about executing flawlessly and always being perfect. Sometimes we got to give ourselves grace. I think back to one of my bosses, and I feel like I mentioned this story in a recent episode, but he would say, this was an agency that I worked for, and we were all kind of overworked and there was a lot of work to be done. We were doing everything for our clients. I was managing clients. I was doing their social media. I was writing their blogs. I was doing the email marketing, building the workflows, all the things, managing the accounts. It was a lot. It taught me a lot and it was such a great job and I loved the team. But at some point, we are not curing brain cancer here. I mean, marketing our businesses is certainly important, but so is your health. So is your mental health. So is your wellness. So is your family. Give yourself grace. There are times that we just need to give ourselves grace, and that's just that. So don't hesitate to give yourself grace when you need it. Things happen. Anyhow, thank you all for listening. As always, if you have a question that you would like me to answer on a future Q&A episode, feel free to email hello@HeidiJSchmidt.com, DM me on Instagram at Heidi Schmidt Creative. And if you're loving the podcast and loving, me, go leave a review, follow the podcast on Apple, Spotify, wherever you subscribe to podcasts, and do all the things. Until next time, go forth, give yourself some grace, but create some amazing content that stops the scroll.